Hello everyone, I'm Jonathan Little for PokerNews.com, and today we have a fun hand from a $1,000 buy-in World Series of Poker event. Right off the bat, we get 6-5 suited. A great hand, but we're in early position. Actually, we're in the low jack seat. Whenever you're considering your position, always count backwards from the button. So here we see the dealer, the cutoff, the hijack. We are in the low jack seat. Then we have under the gun +1 and under the gun. Many players think, like six-handed, if you're under the gun, that you're in a horrible position. I mean, it's pretty bad, but you're in the low jack. So 6-5 suited in the low jack, it's a little bit too loose to raise. If you have not already, go to pokercoaching.com/charts and download the charts. We have some completely free pre-flop range charts for you, so make sure you collect those. And you're going to see that 6-5 suited is on the cusp. It's barely playable, if it is playable. So folding is fine, but raising is also fine. I enjoy raising with the suited connectors, all of them, because they give you very nice board coverage, meaning, say you just don't raise any, or very many hands containing a 6 or a 5, well, when the board comes 6-5-3, the best hand you can have is an overpair, right? Like, say I do raise, and then big blind calls, and it comes 6-5-3, and my opponent knows I can't have 8-7, 7-6, or 6-5, or 5-4, or 4-3. I probably don't have 5-4, 4-3, but anyway, the fact that I don't have perhaps pocket 6s and 5s, because maybe those get folded, maybe I don't have 6-5 suited, because it gets folded, well, now all of a sudden my opponent has way more nut hands than I do, and that's a big problem. So, raising the suited connectors will typically just give you a little bit better board coverage, which is nice. And realize you're only raising 4 combinations of each hand, which is not a ton. So, I do raise, and a cutoff, tight aggressive player calls. Flop comes Jack 7-2, all diamonds. It's also a nice thing about playing suited hands is they make flushes. One thing I see players getting in trouble with a lot is they will play like 10-9 offsuit from any position or Queen-Jack offsuit from any position. And these hands make pairs with marginal kickers. And especially when you're playing deep stack, you really don't want to be making pairs with marginal kickers. So get the big offsuit hands out of your range for the most part. Even the marginal, 10-9 offsuit or 8-7 offsuit, they're not good. Anyway, 6-5 suited flops a flush this time. We're definitely going to bet. And in this scenario, I think we can go 1,600, 2,000, something like that. This is a board where our opponent's going to continue if they have any diamond, and we want to make sure we're not giving them a great price to draw to it. I could even see going a little bit bigger, maybe like 3,200. I think that's fine. I would not bet small, though, and I would definitely not check. This is a spot where slow playing does not make sense at all. When you're slow playing, you always want to consider, can my opponent improve to a hand that thinks it's good, but is still beat? Like right here, if our opponent has the queen of diamonds, let's say, well, if they improve to a flush, we lose, right? So you want them improving to hands that they think are good, that we still beat. So if we had the nut flush, maybe we'd consider checking. Even then, I'd probably still just bet. But you're going to find that boards like this are not a great board to slow play on, especially when you have a vulnerable hand. And our hand is almost certainly best, but is very vulnerable. So we want to be betting. We want to be betting on the medium to big side. I do go 1,600. I think I prefer a little bit bigger. The opponent calls. And the reason I say that is because notice our opponent's getting about 3-to-1 pot odds, and our opponent's only slightly behind those odds if they're drawing to a diamond. Drawing to a better diamond flush, clearly. And if they do get a diamond, like, well, that's what we get on this super sweet turn, we can't just check fold. So first things first, we are checking the turn. If we bet this turn and get called, we are probably dead or nearly dead, unless we bet really small. And we don't want to be betting in spots where if we bet and get called, we're just really dead. We want to be betting where when we get called, we're actually a big favorite, and that is definitely not the case here. So we check. Also notice, funny enough, if our opponent does not have a diamond now they are drawing nearly dead, if not dead. Like say they just have ace-jack, no diamond. If a diamond comes, we still have a flush, right? A better flush than them. So now we have a situation where if we bet and get called, we're very unhappy. If it goes check, check, we're pretty happy. If it goes check and our opponent bets, as happens here, we are marginally unhappy but not devastated. So here, a lot of players will just throw out a bet with any 2 cards when you check, especially if they don't think they can win at the showdown. Let's say our opponent did have 8-7 of spades, or 9-8 of spades, or even 8-7 of spades, either one, and decided to call the flop. they're going to consider betting the turn. Usually they'll bet bigger on the turn, so I'm not loving this bet size. I do think we're in pretty bad shape here because of the bet size. I mean, anytime your opponent makes a bet, you always want to ask, what offer are they proposing me? And right here, our opponent's betting 2,600, giving us, what is this? 1, 2, 3, 4-to-1 pot odds. 4-to-1 pot odds is pretty nice, which means that if I don't have a flush, I'm probably drawing thin. But I do have a flush, but it's a bad flush. So this is one of these scenarios where if I look purely at my opponent's bet size, our opponent can't have a lot of bluffs here, and most tight aggressive players really aren't going to have a lot of bluffs here. That said, we're playing a $1,000 buy-in World Series event, and in $1,000 buy-in World Series events, I don't do a whole lot of folding in small and medium pots. I like to get closer to the showdown and get more and more accurate information. We river a straight, which does not help us. We're definitely going to check. And now if our opponent bets the river, we're probably going to fold, unless we make some sort of hero call. Whenever I check the river here and my opponent does bet, one thing I like to do is wait for like a minute. You'll find some players who will have a very excited pulse in their neck. They'll be super excited. They'll think they have the best. They'll look like they care a lot. And then after a minute, it chills out. Which means, you know what? I think I'm winning this pot. I'm not so excited anymore. I just have the best hand. If their pulse keeps it up, though, for a minute or so, then maybe they are very excited because they're afraid of losing. And if they're afraid of losing, it means I probably have the best hand. That's certainly a thing you can do. I'm not advocating stalling or even going slowly. I am a big fan of the time bank chips, or whatever they use now in the World Series, where you don't get a whole lot of time. But this is one of those spots where reads are very valuable because your opponent knows if he has it or if he's bluffing. There's no in between. Our opponent's not going to be value betting like the 8 of diamonds too often. Maybe they will, but not too often. So in this scenario, our opponent either has the nuts or he doesn't. When I say the nuts, he probably either has like the ace, the king, or maybe the queen, or nothing. And you need to play a little bit of poker. I know I used to always laugh at the old school players who said, oh, now we get to play some poker. But now you get to play some poker because your opponent either has it or they don't. Anyway, this time it goes check, check. And when it goes check, check, I expect to lose a decent amount of the time. I do think our opponent will value bet the queen of diamonds on the turn every time. Maybe even a 10 of diamonds or a 9 of diamonds and then check behind on the river. I think that's a fine play. That said, I probably would have just checked behind on the turn with those and then called any river bet or value bet myself then if our opponent checked the river. But when it goes check, check, that typically indicates that the opponent has a marginal made hand. And marginal made hands in this spot are going to be marginal flushes, which I lose to. So that's a bit of a bummer. And this time we do lose to pocket 10s, 10 of diamonds. Not a shocker. So could we have done anything differently in this hand? I mean, the only spot where we perhaps could have gotten out of the way is exactly on the turn when our opponent bets small. The problem, though, is if you fold to small bets on a very regular basis, if your opponent bluffs, like ever, you are just lighting money on fire. The nice thing about calling small bets is that you really don't have to be right all that often. So don't be too nitty when it comes to calling small bets. Also, don't sit here and think that, oh man, I have a flush. It's the nuts because you flopped a flush. Because just because you started with a strong hand on the flop does not mean we had a strong hand on the river. And by this river, this is a fold if our opponent bets for the most part. So that's going to be it for this hand for Poker News. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please let them know on Twitter at Poker News. If you want more information from me, follow me at Jonathan Little. Thanks a lot for watching. Good luck in your games. If you want more from me, also go to jonathanlittlepoker.com/YouTube. That's my YouTube channel with lots more videos from Poker News and tons more. Good luck, have fun, and I'll talk to you next week.